courts for relief. We were not oblivious to this. We knew that, he did warn us, he did call a family meeting to say that he's against this impeachment committee continuing its work. And so we are absolutely unsurprised by that. But the Constitutional Court has affirmed that Parliament has an independent obligation, constitutionally so, to hold the executive accountable.
Have President Cyril Ramaphosa just made a desperate move to stop Parliament from investigating him? Or is he simply protecting his constitutional rights? South Africa's political landscape has been shaken once again after President Cyril Ramaphosa filed an urgent court application to stop Parliament's impeachment process linked to the controversial Phala Phala scandal. The president wants the courts to halt the impeachment inquiry before Parliament can move any further. His legal team argues that Parliament should not continue with the process while there are still legal challenges surrounding the report that triggered the impeachment proceedings. But critics are not buying that explanation. Opposition parties argue that Ramaphosa is trying to delay accountability and avoid facing questions about the Phala Phala matter.
President Cyril Ramaphosa filed urgent papers in the Western Cape High Court seeking an interdict on the commencement of the impeachment process pending the determination of the review application he brought against the Section 89 independent panel report. National spokesperson for Action SA, Lerato Ngobeni, joins us now for reaction on this. Lerato, does the Action SA party have a view on the papers that were launched by the president, and do you intend as a party potentially opposing those?
No, thank you very much, and good evening to your viewers. Look, the president is entitled to approach the courts for relief. We were not oblivious to this. We knew that, he did warn us, he did call a family meeting to say that he's against this impeachment committee continuing its work. And so we are absolutely unsurprised by that. But the Constitutional Court has affirmed that Parliament has an independent obligation, constitutionally so, to hold the executive accountable. And so, at the end of the day, the impeachment process or the Section 89 committee process is not to find the president guilty or not. It's an investigation. And we don't believe that, the president really will have a leg to stand on. And so at the end of the day, the question, the legal question that we want to deal with is not whether the president can litigate. Of course he can litigate. But what the courts usually, the separation of powers principle is what the court relies on. And so it's reluctant to intervene in unfinished parliamentary proceedings. And so in our view, we're pressing ahead. The impeachment committee will meet on the 24th of June to discuss terms of reference. The rules committee, the sub-rules committee, and as well as the chief whips forum this week went through some of the rules to have a look at whether some rules could be amended. For example, we were dealing with the fit and proper, persons to serve on the committee. So the work must continue, and we will take guidance from that. But in our view, and we are hopeful that the courts are not going to intervene because Parliament and the executive and the judiciary are co-equal partners in running the state. And so we are hoping that they're not going to interfere with that and that his interdict is not going to succeed.
The Speaker of Parliament has been cited as the first respondent. What will be the submission that Action SA makes to the committee on what the position of Parliament should be? Because the committee will have to give a view to the Speaker of Parliament on what it thinks as the first respondent to the application brought by the President should be the position. What then will be the position or the submission that Action SA will make to the committee?
Look, our submission has been consistent. We did write to the Speaker at the very outset of this when Justice Meyer handed down her judgment. And so, our position is going to be that the Speaker must do her work. The Speaker does not work for the President. The Speaker is the head of Parliament, which is an accountability mechanism that must hold the executive to account. And so our stance is very clear to the Speaker, and we have written to this effect. We will strengthen our argument to the Speaker on behalf of the impeachment committee that this work must proceed. This is not something we are not there to deem the president guilty or not guilty. The independent panel report, as well as the Justice Meyer's judgment some couple of about a month ago, was to say that there is prima facie evidence that requires that we go through this process and that we investigate what has happened at Phala Phala, and we just get the facts on the table. Now, what is curious that South Africans must really begin to think about is that President Ramaphosa keeps on saying that he's done nothing wrong. He keeps on saying that there is nothing wrong that he has done, and so why is it that he would want to stop something, a process that could literally find that he actually did do nothing wrong, and that South Africans can judge for themselves? Ultimately, it doesn't matter whether the president interdicts the impeachment process or not. The work will continue. We have been in touch with IPID to get records of decision to be released as to why some of the processes were not undertaken with regards to the people who seem to have benefited from this Phala Phala saga. At the end of the day, the process will carry on, whether or not this impeachment committee ever sits and ever gets to do its work.
Yeah,
they say Parliament should be allowed to continue its work without interference. This comes after a major constitutional court ruling revived the impeachment process, paving the way for Parliament to establish a committee that could investigate whether the president has a case to answer. Now, all eyes are on the courts. If Ramaphosa wins this urgent application, the impeachment process could be delayed for months. However, if he loses, Parliament's investigation will continue, bringing even more political pressure on the president. The case has already sparked heated debate across South Africa, with supporters arguing that every citizen, including the president, deserves a fair legal process. Critics, on the other hand, believe this is simply another attempt to delay accountability. One thing is certain: the battle over Phala Phala is far from over. And as the legal and political drama unfolds, South Africans will be watching closely to see whether the courts side with the president or allow Parliament's impeachment process to proceed. What do you think? Is Ramaphosa protecting his constitutional rights, or is he trying to stop Parliament from holding him accountable? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this update, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss the latest developments in South African politics.